Okay, let's start by setting up the stage. What we have here. So currently I'm signing on the system host name. This is the Windows 10 machine, and of course, who am I? All it's giving me information about my user. This is the James Bond. At this moment, I'm using the local administrator, but for those attacks, it is not necessary. It is just for my convenience to perform some of the tasks from the Windows machine. Obviously, all of those tasks I could do from the Kali Linux, and I will be doing this very soon. But before performing one of my favorite attack on the PKI, I would like to show you a couple of things regarding the PKI, especially regarding the possibility of authentication with the certificates. So first of all, when we look at the certificates, and let me just get there, certmgr.msc, I will find out that there is some certificate that is issued for the James Bond. Really, I have two of them. One is the very bad one with the certificate request agent in it, and as well a client authentication for it. The second one is some kind of user type certificate with the Raccoons VPN and the client authentication. These are issued for the James Bond, so naturally for my user, and I can use them to perform the Kerberos authentication for that. To do that, I will use the CQURE. So I have in the tools the CQURE and x64 CQURE. This is one of the projects from Benjamin Delpy, and I can just simply use DGT and use, for example, PAC to display the content of the response and subject. Let's say James Bond. So I will use the first one from the list because this is the subject issued to I have here. And let's see if this is returning something. This is very important for this demo because, of course, this would be showing me if my KDC is responding for the Kerberos PKI init, so for the authentication with the certificate. And as you can see, I was authenticating as a James Bond, and there is, of course, a lot of information about my groups and my passwords, and as well even my NTLM hash of the password. So really MD5 from that one. So it is giving me a possibility of seeing that password here. Password hash, of course, and I could use that one for the pass the hash attack. Obviously, to use the CQURE, which is very well known malicious application, I had to disable the antivirus, but that doesn't mean anything if I would be doing that from the perspective of the Linux machine. Okay, so I see that my authentication is working. Now it's time for the attacking, but to describe you what I'm going to do, you need to see one more element. So usually we have in the environments a page which would be looking somehow like this, https and the name of my CA, in this case is ca1 raccoons.pl. If I don't know where is it, it's very easy. I can use certutil for that purpose, and it's going to tell me where are the servers. So for example, this is ca1. This would be my first attempt to do that on the server, this one. And there are also web enrollment servers, but these are used for the CES and the CEP, which are using the ca2 raccoons, the different configuration. But those usually does not exist. Usually this is empty, so don't worry about those. We'll be focusing only on this server because it's not about the enrollment services. It is about using the page which is using NTLM authentication. And at this moment, when I'm going to use it, let me just show you klist, and I need to do that on the CMD klist as well on the second list on the second one. You can see that I have for the LDAP, for HTTP for raccoons, there is this also possibility for this authentication here. But if I just simply start, and I would just simply request a certificate here on the page. This page, which is HTTPS, and then there's that certiSIV, this is the web enrollment certificate page. So I can request a new certificates based either on my predefined user certificates, or I can use advanced certificate request, in which I can paste the base 64 encoded certificate request, which can be CMC or PKCS10 or PKCS7. So all of those are acceptable. The only thing is that the template need to be in the schema version 2. If there is schema version 3, so some advanced features are used, it is not possible to use this page. I strongly recommend you not to use this page. It is very legacy thing, and as you can see, it is ASP page. So basically, it is giving us information that this is very old piece of software. And I have in the TMP folder here. Let me just see that one here. And I have here sample CSR. If I open sample CSR, you see base64 encoded string. This is the request. I can, of course, see what is inside of that request without requesting it by just simply using subutil -dum and providing sample CSR as a type of this file. And I will see everything. This is just a sample CSR that you can find on the pages of DigiCert, and this is just something that was generated. Of course, I can generate it by myself here. So, to get a certificate, usually when network device administrator or other administrator which does not have a possibility of requesting certificates directly from the CA by using, for example, MMC console or using the auto-enrollment process, they will get something like this. So the certificate request, and obviously we can choose the template, for example, the www as a template. If I click submit, then the policy module is used for this template to verify if everything is correct according to what was selected there. And obviously, if the certificate is issued right away, I see here cert finish, and then I can download this certificate to see it exactly how it is. So let's see that one, open file, and this is example DigiCert issued by my recognition right now issue. Okay. So I'll be attacking exactly this page because this page is by default using the negotiate on the certificate on the authentication, and I can use here NTLM authentication. And of course, if I use the IP address for that one, it should use the NTLM authentication. So let's see that one. So let's try with the ping CA1. Okay, and just simply go here. Let's see that one. Cert SRD. Of course, it's not trusted, advanced. Let's continue and save. And it's asking me for the authentication because obviously it is not trusted page and it will use the NTLM at that moment for authentication. I can authenticate Jane Bond and authenticate with my password here and do absolutely the same. So just remember that it is possible to do that as well. And this is the problematic part. So it's not automatically using kernels. It might be fallback to the NTLM. So what we can do with this, because all of those M elements so far are the natural elements of the Active Directory certification services. So how we can attack this? Let me clear the screen here. And first, I will connect to my Kali Linux. I will be doing this from the Windows machine. So CQURE with some password here. And this is one connection, the second connection, because I need to have two sessions. And it will be again CQURE with the same password. But this time I will do sudo su and as well the password for that. So I have one console as a root, and in this console, which is running as a root, I will use the packet which is NTLM relay X. Okay, so that's simple. We will do the NTLM relay attack. The NTLM relay attack will use, for example, SMB2 support, and the target of that one, as you can guess, it's going to be the CA1 reference, and this is the cert finish ASP. So it's going to request from the ADCS a template, and the template which I want to use is Kerberos authentication. Obviously, if there is no Kerberos authentication template published on the CA, that's another story. We need to choose different. But standard user cannot request this. who can do that? Of course, the domain controller. So, if I want to do that, I need to have an incoming or use the man-in-the-middle attack on NTLM authentication initiated by domain controller. Okay, so let's see that. First of all, I will start this. So it's going to start a lot of different listeners, and it's waiting. So on the second console, I need to trigger something that will give me a possibility of initiating the domain controller authentication towards my computer. So now in this case, Kali Linux. So IPA, you can see that it is 250 as an IP address. And here, let's start with the PetitPotam as an example of the attack. So as a PetitPotam, I will use, and in this case, it's a Python-free PetitPotam script, which you can download from the GitHub. There's just a user. It does not need to be any privileged user. It needs to be any user inside of this Active Directory. And obviously the domain raccoons, the IP address of my Kali Linux, and the IP address of the domain controller. So in general, I will use PetitPotam, and this is a coercing attack on the IP address 10.10.10.11.11, so on the domain controller, which will trigger domain controller to authenticate to my Kali Linux. On my Kali Linux, there is something we're listening and waiting for it. So this script will forward the request for authentication towards the Active Directory certification services. Let's see how this one works. So I'm starting this communication, but the communication which I will execute here, it's going to bind and request the access by using this RPC call, EFS RPC encrypt file SLV, and it's going to authenticate back to me. So the domain controller is authenticating to the Kali Linux. Kali Linux is forwarding this towards the Active Directory certification services. And right now you can see here that after the authentication was successfully forwarded, so authentication against the CA1 raccoons.pl, I got the CSR which was issued, which was used to issue a base64 certificate for the user DC1 $1. So let's see how this one can be abused. Let's open the files, let's go to the tab, and let's create the new DC1 file. Okay, so I'm saving this one, and obviously after saving this base64 encoded file, I will make a copy of it to show you that this is DC1 and this time PFX, because I need to have also access to the private key. After opening this one, let's import it in the current, and I don't need to mark it, the password is empty. Place certificates, I always place it in the personal for this purpose, and finish. So you can see right now on the list of the certificates, when I refresh it, I have a DC1 raccoons.pl, which has a client authentication. It has also KDC and smart card logon, but the most important is client authentication. And obviously, this is a trusted certificate. So what can we do? Very simple. Right now, I can use this base64 encoded PFX with CQURE to impersonate someone else. Okay, so let's do that. Starting the second console, just going to the TMP and using the K list again to show you who am I. I'm James Bond here. So in a second, you will see that it will change. Because here I'm starting the CQURE, so tools, CQURE, x64 and CQURE. Okay. Base64 input on to have a possibility of requesting something. And now TGT, and this time I will ask for some user DC$1 domain raccoons.pl, let's see if that's the correct domain, and PTT as pass the ticket, and PFX, and I will hit enter to correct in any case the problems if they occur. And now the most difficult part, to copy and paste this at the end. And as you can see, it was issued. Issuer, okay, CA1, okay, serial of my certificate, and obviously in my K list there is going to be a change. This time I'm the DC1 on the domain, so I'm the domain controller. Okay, so the domain controller cannot create a user. Domain controller cannot do too much, but domain controller can perform synchronization. So the next step is just to start the Mimikatz, for example, here, and I will use tools Mimikatz, not Mimikatz Kakao, x64 Mimikatz, and perform in this well privileged debug. It's not yet needed, but I will do this for future. And what I would like to do is LSA dump and DC sync, and all in the CSV format. And I can find out that there is a James Bond with this password hash, so I can perform the pass the hash attack. But also, if I would like to, there's always a possibility for me to get a KRBTGT. So if I want to have a user KRBTGT, user KRBTGT, and maybe not this one, but let's see. We have all the information about this NTLM hash of that user, also the keys for the different scenarios of authentication methods. So I can also use RS256 for HMAC for the strongest creation of the Kerberos tickets. Obviously, this one is used for the golden ticket attack or similar. So let me do the simpler one, which is obviously the pass the hash. So secure LSA, and PTH, user it's admin, domain is raccoons, and then NTLM and the hash of that user. New one is appearing, and I can create net. I can just jump with the sysinternals tools, PSEXZ, for example, to DC1, and simply, okay, this is doing overpass this hash, and who am I? You will see that this is admin, and host name, I'm obviously on the DC1. So that's the simplest path of escalation which can be used for the domain controller. So to sum it up, I was first a standard user who requested the RPC call with PetitPotam to domain controller. The domain controller started the authentication to my system. So that was first PetitPotam and authentication. Then it was requesting the authentication, which was forwarded to my certification authority web enrollment portal, which was using the NTLM authentication. And at the end, I'm getting the certificate for the DC1, performing standard PKI init for the certificate. So the Kerberos authentication with the certificate as DC1, and from the DC1 I'm synchronizing by using DC sync all the hashes and using the pass the hash attack to become a domain admin at this moment by just simply connecting to the DC and doing whatever I like. Obviously, those steps with connecting to the domain controller could be stopped by the antivirus, etc. But this is the simplest thing which you can do for showing what the domain controller can do. Obviously, we can do also not the DC sync, but as well DC shadow kind of the attack. So remember that LSA dump, and there is a DC sync, but also the DC shadow, which is the a different direction of what we can do when we are domain controller.